Well, if you clicked on this video, then I suggest that you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, or late 20s. And I have just two humble appeals to make to you. And the first thing that you need to consider is to read this book that is Think and Grow Rich, written by Napoleon Hill. And then secondly, stay through this video because we'll be sharing the 10 money mistakes that you need to avoid, especially in your 20s, in order to steer yourself subsequently towards the attainment of whatever financial goal that you set for yourself. And so if you're new here, my name is Nana. I hold a master's degree in business finance, and on this channel, we discuss everything personal finance and personal development. And so, without further ado, we come to the first money mistake that people tend to make in their early 20s, and that is not setting financial goals. And so, according to Napoleon Hill, one thing that you need to do is to try and set a definite chief aim. And he believes that a definite chief aim is a goal that you're willing to subordinate any other interest for, especially when it comes to finances. And you're in your 20s, people will tell you that you've got the best of times and then you have to enjoy the moment and then live within the moment and all that. They tend to talk you out into prioritizing instant gratification as opposed to delayed gratification. But if you truly want to become successful financially in life, then you need to sit down and then have a financial goal. And that is what would subsequently drive every action and inaction of yours, probably in your late 20s, your early 30s, and then more importantly, throughout life. Most of the people out there that you see that are successful actually sat down to define whatever they want their lives to look like several decades before they eventually actually steered themselves towards those positions. And so the first thing that you need to do in your 20s is to try as much as possible and then define that financial goal and then live according to that goal and then contribute marginally, consistently towards the attainment of those goals. This brings us to the second money mistake, and that is spending more than you earn. So one of the key reasons why people do not see success or they do not realize the attainment of any financial goal throughout life is simply because when they set out to live life in their early 20s, they develop the habit of having to expend and then actually not having anything left at the end of the month to save or to invest. And so if you truly want to become successful, there's one thing that you need to start in your early 20s, or probably it's never even late if you're in your late 20s, because I'm 28 as I sit here. And so it is never late to actually start in your late 20s. Try as much as possible to live below your means and then save the excess or invest whatever is left at the end of the month in any form of emergency fund or probably even in the stock market. And that would ensure that you're fortified subsequently against any economic turmoil should any arise in the near future. This brings us to the third money mistake, and that is not tracking your money or tracking your expenses altogether. And that stems from one psychological effect known as the ostrich effect. So the ostrich effect is simply a condition where we actually shy away from responsibilities or things that are likely going to challenge us to actually face our goals and to subsequently execute in accordance with those goals. And so, for example, if you go out to spend so much on a weekend, you're likely not going to see your banking app notification simply because you don't want to face how much you actually expended on a weekend. If you know truly that you spent on things that might not be categorized as needs or things that might not be delivering any value to you. So you do not open the bank app altogether. And that also gives you some level of comfort because what you do not know cannot actually burden you. And so you shy away from all those financial responsibilities of having to track whatever expense or wherever your money is going. And that is one of the gravest things that people do. And that eventually leads them to one thing, and that is poverty. This brings us to the fourth money mistake, and that is over-reliance or dependence on credit cards. So the average credit card APR is around about 21%, which simply means that holding all other factors constant, if you're not able to settle any debts that you owe credit card companies, you're going to pay 21% extra on that amount. And so for instance, if you owe $1,000, you're going to pay $210 extra as interest on the $1,000 that you owe. And that is one of the main reasons why people cannot eventually actually become financially free. Why? Because they are saddled with unthinkable levels of debt that they might not even throughout their lifetime be able to settle. And so in your early 20s, one of the key things that you need to do is to try as much as possible to purchase things with cash. And then think about it well before you purchase. You can practice what is popularly known as the 30-day cooling off period, which simply means that anytime that you want to purchase something, you can actually delay that purchase by 30 days to actually ascertain whether or not that thing is a need or is a want, or you were just actually driven by emotions to get that thing. And that would eventually help you to cut down on your expenses in your early 20s so that you have enough to save and then probably to invest for retirement. This brings us to the fifth money mistake, and that is not starting to invest early and then consistently. So one of the easiest ways that you can actually become a millionaire is to contribute $500 into the S&P 500 at an annual rate of between 8% and 10% for 30 years. That would actually add up to $1 million at the end of the 30-year period. And that is one of the easiest ways for you to actually become a multi-millionaire. But one of the reasons why people do not do this is simply because it is extremely cumbersome, in that you have to ensure high levels of discipline in order to make sure that you're consistently contributing into the stock market. And then secondly, it is extremely boring, in that people are wired to actually prioritize instant gratification, like I said earlier. So they are looking for all the side hustles that can make them a multi-millionaire within the shortest possible time. And that is how most people go about to lose money. And so in your early 20s, there's one thing that you need to know: try as much as possible and then avoid losing money. Because according to Warren Buffett, the best and the greatest rule when it comes to investment is to never lose money. And the surest way, according to him, to actually do this is to invest in the S&P 500. And that is one of the surest ways that you're actually going to see financial freedom. This brings us to the sixth money mistake, and that is not taking advantage of your free time to actually build or to deliver value. And then in exchange of that, you actually get some form of money or income coming in. And so one of the easiest ways for you to actually become financially free is to diversify your income streams. And that actually stems from one thing: you actually having to commercialize whatever existing talent or skills that you have. In your early 20s, you may not have so much skills, but the one thing that you have is time. So try as much as possible and then learn new skills and then commercialize those skills, because that is what would eventually add value to you. And then people, in exchange for that value, would give you money and drive you subsequently towards becoming a multi-millionaire, possibly in the near future. This brings us to the seventh money mistake, and that is ignoring insurance or not actually building an emergency fund. So money is one of the key reasons why people are actually not happy in life. And if you truly want to become happy, especially starting in your 20s, then there's one thing that you need to do. You need to try as much as possible and then invest in an emergency fund. So try and then save anywhere between 1 to 6 months of your monthly expenses, and that would serve as a fallback in times of need should you find yourself in any economic turmoil down the line. Also, what you have to do is that you need to purchase insurance to protect your assets and sometimes your life or even your health. Most young people that I've met, especially in my days when I was selling insurance, would always go like, oh, but I'm too young, I don't need pension. I'm too young, I don't need health insurance or life insurance. What you need to know is that if you truly want to become financially free in life, there's one thing that you have to set out to do, and to do it quite early, and that is to prioritize insurance. That is, buy and then ensure that there's insurance in place for most of the things that you do. For instance, you may not have huge assets as it stands now, but even home and content insurance can actually protect your progress, in that you will be indemnified should any insured peril like flooding or fire come, touch wood, to burn all the things that you own, probably in your home. This brings us to the eighth money mistake, and that is going into debt to buy luxury items. So there's one thing that the ultra rich do: they go into debt to actually purchase assets that subsequently realize some form of income, and that also helps them to build companies or probably diversify their income streams. So what you need to know is that anytime that you're going into debt, you really want to go into debt simply because you're going into debt to purchase an asset that will subsequently bring in some form of revenue or some form of income down the line. If you truly want to build wealth, avoid having to go into debt simply because your friend got the latest iPhone, and so you're also taking credit or you're using your credit card to purchase a new iPhone. If that iPhone isn't going to serve any purpose or deliver any value to you, then you're better off shying away from that or going into debt to purchase those things just to keep up with the Joneses. This brings us to the ninth money mistake, and that is not discussing your finances with your significant other. So most families and most homes do not actually discuss money simply because the topic of money is forbidden in that house. And that also, once again, stems from the ostrich effect. If you really set out to build life with someone, it may be your spouse, a partner, or even someone, a colleague at work, what you have to know is that you need to be as open as possible. Try and then share ideas and then make sure that you're all like-minded, in that you're contributing resources towards the attainment of whatever goals that you share. And that is one of the surest ways for you to actually build wealth and to sustain yourself in the near future. This brings us to the 10th and the last money mistake, and that is starting a family without a financial plan. And so according to the Brookings Institution, you're going to spend in excess of $18,000 every single year if you have 2 kids. And of course, you're living with your spouse. So that is one of the key things that you need to consider. And you need to consider that quite early, especially if you're in your early 20s. You need to think about the future and then think in terms of decades, because that is one of the hallmark of the ultra rich and people who go ahead in life to see some success in life. So try as much as possible and then think about your kids even before they come into the scenes. So what you have to do is to simply save and then invest in anticipation for every single child that you'd have, so that anytime that you're going to meet your partner, you wouldn't have to struggle or start from scratch. And that is one of the greatest advice that you can ever have in life. And these are the 10 time tested mistakes that people tend to make in life, and that leads them to not realizing their goals altogether. And so thank you for spending time with us. If you found value with this video, kindly smash the like button and then consider following, because we'll be shooting several videos down the line on such topics. Thank you, and see you once again.